I want to welcome you to the Holy Cross Village Speaker Series again, and thank you for coming. Remind you to please turn off your cell phones or put them on airplane mode so they don't go off during the talk. I think most of you know me. I'm still Sharon Leahy, and haven't changed my name. And remember, I'm always looking for new speakers, so if you have any topic you feel would interest others, please see me afterwards and volunteer, or tell me anytime. And an alert for next month's speaker. On Monday, October 16th, Doug Archer, retired Notre Dame librarian, will give a talk on the subject of banned books, one of his areas of expertise. Today's talk will run approximately 1 hour. After a brief introduction, the speaker will have approximately 35 to 40 minutes to present the topic, and when he's finished, we'll have question and answer session. So please try to save your questions for then. And now I give you Bill Leahy, who will introduce today's speaker. Be careful of all those wires, you don't trip on them.
Most of you know Frank from his being here at the village and being one of our bus drivers. But I've known Frank for over 50 years. When Frank attended Notre Dame in the early 1970s, he was a student in my classes, and Frank was an excellent student. I would also see Frank nearly every day at football practice. And in those days, Frank and I could run a 4.6 but no longer. And he was a left guard on Ara's winning football teams. He was captain of the 1973 national championship team, which was undefeated and untied, and beat Alabama in the Sugar Bowl. I present Frank Pomarico to give you an insider's account of a legendary coach, and then the men who played for Ara. Frank.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Bill. Bill was really a lifesaver for me at school. He was somebody that can direct you not just as a professor, but as a friend in a lot of ways, and kept me out of trouble in a couple of instances, which was very, very good for me, for sure. But he did that with a lot of guys. So Bill was a big asset to the University of Notre Dame football program and the students in general. So it's great to be here. One of the things I really enjoy about working at Holy Cross Village are the relationships that I'm developing. I don't really look at this as somebody that is driving people around. I really look at it as a chance to get to know somebody. And a lot of the people are a little bit older than I am, not that much, maybe 10, maybe 15 years older, some cases maybe even more. But what I'm finding out is this is a window into the future for me. And I can see how people handle aging in a graceful way, with integrity, with character. These are things that are something that's been in their life, their whole life, but they use it now in where they're going in their current life. And it's harder to get older. I know it. I'm feeling it myself. From a guy who used to play handball 7 days a week and run a couple of miles a day and lift and do all kinds of physical fitness activities, I'm now somebody who struggles to get up the stairs sometimes, not so much because I'm out of breath. My knees are achy, and it's like I need WD-40 for my knees sometimes, or my hips. But it's just a process, and I think if you understand that process and recognize it, you're able to handle it in a much more graceful way, which is what I'm trying to do, and I'm learning how to do when I'm around the people here. So I have developed a lot of new friendships. I really enjoy that. And each individual I meet and talk to is almost a book in themselves. It'd be interesting if I was a writer that can write real quickly, because each person that I visit with is really a book. Their life is a book. It's interesting. They've been through, and a lot of times they were through World War II, or maybe shortly afterwards, and it parallels a little bit of what my parents went through as well. My dad just passed away in May. He was 93 years old. Frank, he was a Marine, Paris Island Marine, New York City policeman, good guy, a guy who was a tremendously powerful guy, but yet he was very kind too, and somebody who would cuddle you and make you feel like, you know, the world wasn't going to get at you. And to me, that was really a good thing. You know, he was born in 1930, September 13th, yesterday was his birthday, September 13th, 1930, and he died on May 24th of 2023. But those 2 days are important, but not as important as the dash in between. And what I mean by the dash is that when you see dates, you see there's always a dash in between. That's what the person's life was about. And I think if we all think about the dash and the things that we've done that have been so beneficial, not just to ourselves, but to other people, how we raise families and how we've nurtured our children and tried to pass on the good values that we've received from our own parents. This is all great stuff. So the dash is really important in life, and I think a lot of you understand that. You may not heard it put that way, but that dash is something that we all need to understand and recognize. You know, I just finished a book by a guy named Jack Carr. Jack Carr wrote The Terminal List, which is an exciting action thriller about a Navy SEAL, and he had follow-up books as well, True Believer, Savage Son, Only the Dead, and in the last book, at the end there was an acknowledgement, and the acknowledgement was the first paratrooper to land on Normandy in 1945. And on his headstone it said, death is not a destination, death is a doorway. And to me, that just gave me tremendous amount of hope. When you think about that, it's not a destination, it's a doorway. That means we're going to another place. And I truly believe that that's what's going to happen to all of us. We're going to another place where we'll recognize our loved ones, and we'll recognize a lot of people that maybe we didn't know here on earth. So, and maybe even our pets. I know sometimes I walk my dogs over at Notre Dame every day, and sometimes twice a day. And they are as close to me as a lot of humans are, and they treat me a lot better than a lot of humans do. But they really have such an unconditional love for their human parent. And I look at that dog, and sometimes I look, and it seems like I'm looking in their soul. My poodle, Bo, I mean, I'll be anywhere. I'll be in the bathroom. I'll be in the garage. He's right next to me. And for some reason, he thinks I'm going to leave him, which I never would. But it's neat to have somebody that cares for you that much. Sometimes when I'm not even looking, my wife will say, "Look at Bo. He's looking at you." And I look at him, and sure enough, he's staring at me like, "Hey, what are you doing now? What are you thinking? Are we going to go for our walk soon?" So that's always kind of interesting how dogs can really fill a vacuum in a person's life. You know, I was a fan of the Wonder Years, the TV show, and nowadays I'm in the Wonder Years. I wonder where I put my phone. I wonder what day it is. I wonder why I came downstairs instead of going upstairs. And all of a sudden I'll think, oh yeah, there it is. But the Wonder Years are kind of interesting, because I think probably a lot of people experience the same thing. Why did I open up this refrigerator? I know I was going to get something, but what was it? So things are moving along pretty fast, and I'm just trying to hold on as much as I can to the family life that we have at home. My son and my daughter are away now. My daughter lives in Minneapolis, and my son is in Flagstaff, Arizona. By the way, my son played at the University of Michigan, which a lot of people say, oh my goodness, how could you let him play there? Well, he wanted to come to Notre Dame, but they didn't even give him a sniff. So he went to the University of Michigan, and we beat Notre Dame 3 times. Of course, I was a fan of Michigan at that time with my son playing there. But it was great that actually he didn't come to Notre Dame, because now he had his own legacy as opposed to coming after his dad. So it worked out pretty good. And I can remember right before his senior year, he went to the camp over there, and I had become pretty good friends with Bo Schemblecker. And Bo had coached with Ara at Northwestern and also had been at Miami of Ohio. So they were very close. Some of the things that went on between them, I didn't even know until I wrote this book, Ara's Nights. But I was introduced to him when I was selling Nautilus machines, and he became my biggest customer. The person says, "This is Frank Pomarico. He was a captain at Notre Dame." Bo looked at me and says, "Notre Dame? Why would you bring a Notre Dame guy to deal with us?" I said, "Coach, I did go to Notre Dame, but I played for Ara Parseghian." He looked at me and stared, and he said, "Son, you could stay all you want." So, again, it's about people more so than places. And I think that's the thing that was so interesting about playing around playing with Ara Parseghian on an Ara Parseghian team. To me, I like Notre Dame. It's a great complex. It has great buildings, has a great tradition, but the person that I played for at Notre Dame is the thing that made it so special for me. I had heard about Ara from a fellow named Larry DiNardo, who went to my high school 3 years before I went to Notre Dame. He was a senior when I was a freshman, and he kept coming back telling us about this fellow, Ara Parseghian, how intense he was, but also how fair he was, about how disciplined he was, and yet how much he cared for the players. So these are qualities that I thought, boy, I would like to play for somebody like that. We also heard that he never did anything really outrageous as far as going off the charts with practices and stuff. And you heard such horror stories about some practices with coaches around the country. So for me, this was a goal. Now here I am, a 13-year-old chubby little kid in New York City at Our Lady of Grace, thinking, I'd like to go to Notre Dame. People are saying to me, Notre Dame, what are you, crazy? You're not going to go to Notre Dame. You're just a chubby little kid. So everything I did was geared to playing at Notre Dame. Everything I ate, every bench press I did, every squat I did, every deadlift I did, was all in my mind thinking, this is one step closer to getting to play for Ara Parseghian. So I wasn't, if Ara was at Miami of Ohio, I was going to want to go to Miami of Ohio. If he was at Northwestern, I was going to want to go to Northwestern. And the interesting thing about that is when I would interview people from Northwestern for the book or Miami of Ohio, they would say the same things that we were feeling and we were hearing from our own players at Notre Dame. It was almost like they were on our team. There was one fellow named Terrell Burton at Miami of Ohio who was on Michigan's staff. And I called him, I said, Coach, you don't know who I am, but I sell you guys Nautilus machines. He said, oh yeah, I've seen you around. I says, I'm doing this book about Ara Parseghian. I was wondering if I can interview. He says, you're going to do a book on Ara? I'll do anything for Ara. He says, well, there's a lot of things that happened in the 50s. He was a black fella. He says, there are a lot of things happened in the 50s you probably don't want to hear about. I says, no, I do. I want to hear about all that stuff. So he told me a number of stories, but the main story that he said was that Ara was always fair, and it didn't matter what color you were. You could be green, red, white, purple. If you were a better player, you were going to play. And the interesting thing about when Ara was deciding on a subject, no matter what it would be, is that he would poll a lot of his assistant coaches. Now, he was always going to pull the trigger on who was going to play or who was not going to play, or on maybe who was going to get punished or not punished, or whatever decision he had to make on a different topic. But he would get input from all the other assistants, and maybe even from some of the captains, which I found out later on when I became one of the captains. But he would always make the decision. And the thing that was always so paramount about Ara is that he was always fair. And I think anytime people are fair with you, you have a tendency to be loyal to that person. They're just. If there was one word I can describe Ara Parseghian with, is that he was the truth. He was always true to what people would think be the right thing to do. So I was asked one time, what was it like playing for Ara Parseghian? I said, well, it was kind of like playing for royalty. He was our King Arthur, and we were his knights. The guy said, boy, what an interesting topic for a book. I said, yeah, I've been thinking about doing something. And I had just finished, not long before, I had a 10-hour open chest thing with a aneurysm I had in my north of my heart. So I said, boy, if I'm going to do this, I better start doing it pretty quick because I don't know how long I'm going to be around. And sure enough, we started this project. And one of the projects was I had to find somebody who was a writer. So I found this fella, and I called him in Michigan, and he went to Notre Dame. He graduated about 1971. And I said, Ray, like to help me with it. He said, boy, that sounds like a neat project. He says, but my wife has MS. He says, and I have a full-time job writing speeches for CEOs of the auto industry. He says, I don't think I can do it. This is a Friday. So I said, okay, I got to find somebody else. So the weekend goes by. Monday morning early, I get a call. Frank, this is Ray. Hey, Ray, how you doing? He says, did you get anybody to do the book with you? I says, no, not yet. He says, well, my wife wants me to do it with you. I says, great. And so we start off on this adventure, interviewing different people. And some people say, wasn't it really hard to do a book? I says, I couldn't wait to get to it, because I had film on every game that I played in. So I knew what I was talking about was accurate. And Ray was able to color it in a way that was very expressive. So it turned out to be a really nice project to have. But, you know, Ara was always somebody that was positive and always somebody that the cup was always half full. So it was easy when I was talking to people. You know, a lot of times I would ask myself questions like, what are my dreams? What are my goals? What is my plan? How do I get there? Well, back when I was 13 years old, my dream was to play at Notre Dame. My goals were to get through high school, to graduate, obviously, and to play the best football I could possibly play. My plan was to get big and strong and eat like a wild beast, because my mother was a great cook and she made great Italian food. A lot of people say, where's the best Italian food in New York City? I said, my mother's house. I wouldn't go out to a restaurant, Italian restaurant. But the purpose of being able to play for Ara was my underlining theme. And that was the main thing that I was thinking about. I also read a book years ago, The Journey. It's called The Lonely Victory. Peter Habler was a guy that climbed Mount Everest without oxygen. Not many people can climb Mount Everest, and with oxygen, it's even much tougher. But he said the most important thing about any goal that you have is not so much that you want to get to the summit, but you have to embrace the workouts to get there. You have to embrace the whole journey, because if you do that, it's much more meaningful and you're a much stronger person for getting there. Anything about your being is getting to that goal. And it was for me. Like I said, every course I took, every chance I had to better myself, I would try to do it. Hanging around with guys like Larry Donato was something that was getting me there as well. I'm from New York City, and I knew I didn't want to stay in New York City, though. It's a tough place to live. It's expensive, but also, when I was in high school, I had to take a subway 45 minutes to get to St. Francis Prep. I had to take another subway for 45 minutes to get to Red Hook to practice, and another subway for an hour to get home to Howard Beach right near Kennedy Airport. So, you know, you had to really appreciate playing and want to play. If you didn't, it was a tall journey. My mother was a hot, fiery Italian woman. She died real early. She was only 63 years old. But she used to always tell me, dream and dream big. And that's what I used to do. I used to think, she used to say, why not you? If Larry can do it, why can't you do it? And sure enough, I would would think about different things like Robert Browning said, man's reach must exceed his grasp. If I didn't get to Notre Dame, maybe I'd be getting to some place like, I don't know, Villanova, not as great in football, but, it's still a good place to go to school. Then I have help from my father. My father is in the middle. That's my son who played at the University of Michigan. He was only 14 years old in that picture. He's now 6'5". And my dad was always very much into discipline. He was somebody that discipline was the way to get to things. If you wanted something, if you were disciplined in doing it, you would eventually get to your goal. He had this thing about, as a Marine, he had this thing about making his bed every morning, to make sure that you started off the day by doing and finishing a task. And if you finish this task, you're going to go to another task, and then another, and another. And by the end of the day, you had a pretty productive day because you checked off all the things you were supposed to do. Now, also, if you had a bad day, you were still coming home to a crisp, clean bed. And that was something he was very adamant about. And in the Marine Corps, if you didn't do it, there was some big consequences. When I was in high school, I got a scholarship. It was me, Jerry DiNardo, which is Larry's brother, and another fella named Jerry Burns, who became a Secret Service agent. We all went to a place called Outward Bound School off the coast of Maine. And what they do there is they put you in a situation where they teach you how to live if you're shipwrecked. Now, I went there to get in shape for football. Like every morning you had to get up, run around the island, which is 2.5 miles. And there's rocks and hills, and it's pretty colorful, beautiful, but you're not really thinking about the beauty when you're huffing and puffing. And then when you get to the end of the trail, at the end of the run, you had to jump in the ocean. And in August, it's cold in Maine. Even if it's 80 outside, the water's still cold. So we would jump in. Now, if a city kid who Midwest kid wasn't used to the ocean, he would shy away from it. But the problem was, if he didn't do it, nobody could eat in your group. So the key thing was you had some peer pressure there from other guys, to jump in. Like, if you don't jump in, we're going to throw you in, But it was a good learning experience for me. And again, it was the same thing with making your bed and cleaning up around your tent. We all lived in tents there. And at the end of this experience, they put you on a small island for 3 days by yourself. I don't know how many people have been alone for 3 days by themselves, but it's a different experience. I mean, you start talking to yourself about a lot of different things. And I grew from it. It was a good learning experience. I felt after I finished there that I can handle almost any challenge. This is the high school I went to, St. Francis Prep. It was an all-boys high school, 900 kids. People that looked out for me, my father, of course, he was a New York City cop, and he was very disciplined as far as what I was allowed to do and not allowed to do. So I listened to him. I felt that he was always on the right track and somebody that cared about me and wanted me to do well. Brother Owen Capper was a guy about my dad's age, and he was a hard guy. I mean, he pushed us really hard, but I didn't care because my goal was to get to Notre Dame, and if he was going to assist me to do that, I was all in. And Vince O'Connor was more of a cerebral guy who was our head football coach and coached till he was about 85 years old. And he was somebody that also helped me in a lot of ways understand what life was about once I got to the varsity. I remember at St. Francis Prep, just to give you a little bit of an idea of the environment at St. Francis Prep, all boys. And we had firemen that were sending their kids there, police officers send their kids there, and Department of Sanitation, all city workers, middle-class guys. Guys that hopefully their kids were going to go to college and have a little better life than they did. First day of school, Brother Williams says, I think I told Jerry this story, but first day of school, Brother Williams says, hey, listen, if we see your son not doing the right thing and we give him a whack, if you don't like that, take him out of school today. My father looked at me and says, I like this place. I go, oh my God, I'm in for a tough 4 years. But it really wasn't. The brothers were great to us. They were nurturing. Occasionally a guy would get belted, but I think for the most part, he deserved it most of the time. So it was a good experience. I had some really good relationships with the brothers, and to this day, some of them are my good friends. This is the first time I saw a Notre Dame game, Notre Dame, Michigan State. I remember my mother calling me from outside playing touch football. She says, Frankie, come on in. Daddy is watching a game. He wants you to watch it with him. And he says, hey, you got to see this guy, Ara Parseghian here. He's the guy that Larry's been talking about. And sure enough, that was, he loved the way Ara was always so poised on the sidelines and did such a great job in that game. It was a 10-10 game, if anybody remembers that. But Michigan State didn't cross the 50 in the second half. And the other thing about that was really impressive is that we had lost our fullback, or top tailback. We had lost a Hanratty and our center. So we were kind of handicapped. But still, we came out 10-10, and we won the national championship, which was a great thing. These are the guys. That guy on the right is the guy, the Secret Service agent. He had some great stories to talk about. Good guy. Went to Villanova, played football. John Basti, the shorter guy there, he's a physical therapist. To this day, he's a guy to help me with my shoulders. Jack Capper is the guy in the middle. That's me in the back, and then Phil Bracco is the guy that played quarterback in North Carolina. One of the things the brothers used to talk about is that, you don't need any talent at all to be on time, to have work ethic, to give effort, to have energy and be positive and happy, to have a good attitude, to be passionate about what you're doing. But being coachable, stop breaking my chops by not listening to what I'm saying. Doing extra. I was great for that. One of the reasons why I've had both shoulders replaced is because I was a very enthusiastic weightlifter. I felt if 3 days are supposed to be good, 7's got to be better. Doesn't work that way. What happens is I roll the cartilage off my joint and the bones fuse together. So now I can move them pretty good. But Dr. Bigliani put his famous replacement in there, so I'm able to do that. But also being prepared in anything you're doing, and it takes no talent at all to give 100% in being tough. And a lot of times you'll see teams, when I was at Lumen Christi as a coach up in Michigan, we would beat teams with much better talent. But it was because we were disciplined. Because we worked hard, because we played what Coach used to talk about is the interval. People say, what do you mean the interval? Well, the interval is the snap of the ball to the referee blowing the whistle. It's really about 5 or 6 seconds. And if you can sustain effort for 5 or 6 seconds, you're going to be a very good football player. And that's something we used to think about all the time as I was in college. But also I tried to instill in some of the kids that we had at Lumen Christi. This is my roommate. That's Vince O'Connor on the left. And Dan Morin was my roommate. And he played quite a bit, made the key block in the Sugar Bowl on a kickoff return that set Al Hunter off on a 93-yard run for a touchdown. The thing is, what I realized is that I have to do this. I'm the person that has to put forth the effort. I'm the person that has to create the environment and the opportunity to be able to get looked at by a college like Notre Dame or by a coach like Ara Parseghian. I think there was some real positive ideas that were thrown around about Larry DiNardo. And I think if they looked at me, I was about the same size as Larry. And I think they felt if we had such success with Larry, maybe lightning can strike twice. And sure enough, when I was a sophomore, I was the only sophomore to start at left guard. Not that I was the best athlete. There was other better athletes in my class. But that position is where they really needed help. And I was driven to be at that position. I wanted to do everything I possibly can. And I tell you, I broke down in tears the night before the game when they gave me Larry's jersey, number 56. I was really shocked that they did that, but also elated. And then when my parents saw me the next day with that number on, they couldn't believe it either. But, you know, your mom and dad can't do the work for you. Your neighbors can't do it. You have to do the work. And you have to have that hunger. You know, a lot of times I think about Michael Jordan. I don't know if anybody's seen that show, The Last Dance. The thing that's so great about it is that he hated to lose. This is something that he hated more than anything, to lose. Now, I don't know, he wanted to win, but he hated to lose. And I think in my situation, I wanted this so bad. I used to pray about it. I used to cry about it. I used to laugh about it. Again, everything I possibly could do to get to that position, I did, within the rules, of course. I mean, I never took any kind of enhancing drugs, steroids, or anything like that. Just a lot of pasta and meatballs from my mother. But I think what happens is when you work hard and you have a hunger to be successful in reaching your goals, things happen. You create your own opportunities. And people recognize hunger to be successful. And I think Ara is one of those people. He was really able to decipher, you know, the kind of people that he wanted, not just on his team, because his team was really his family. I mean, there was so much of camaraderie and so much caring coming from the coaches, and in particular, Ara. So that was the thing that was so impressive. You know, I have this up here. This is Joe Frazier knocking down Muhammad Ali. Now, maybe some of you remember this, maybe you don't, but these are two champions. Ali had been suspended for 3 years, but the thing that's so important about this is he's laying on his backside, and they asked him, what were you thinking when you got knocked down to the canvas in the 15th round? He said, get up, get up, get up. And so many times in our life, we get knocked down. You know, we may get cancer. We may lose a job. We may, you know, have some critical medical problem that's happening in our family. You know, you can fold up the tents and just sit there and cry, or you can get up and fight. That's something that my brother did when he was 18. He had testicle cancer. He's 63 now, has some issues, but still on his indoor bike 40 minutes a day, striving to survive. And he's doing it. He's doing it. So, like Coach used to talk about with his grandkids, being able to move the football down the field as far as the research is concerned. And that's something he never gave up on. I remember going and telling my mom had passed away at 63. This is 1994. And he had just found out about his grandkids, and he told me about that. He says, you know, I got a problem in my family too. He said, but we can't put our head down. We got to keep our head up, and we got to fight forward. So the idea of never giving up is something that was instilled in us from Coach and a lot of the people that you come across along the way. I was fortunate. I was around people that cared about me and told me the right things. So every day, even now, every day I start with the count as 0. What have you earned today? What have you done to make yourself better or to help somebody else? Have you earned the shower? Meaning, have you worked out so that you can take the shower and enjoy the shower instead of just taking a shower because you got up? So it's an important thing, never to quit, and always, the count is always 0 every morning. What are you going to do to make somebody else's life better? There's Coach. How did he build his team? He built it on faith, family, pride, discipline, and loyalty. I'll get into briefly some of these things, but when I talk about faith, I'm not really talking about religion faith. I'm talking about the faith that somebody has inside of them, the positive things that they do every day for other people. This is what faith really is. You know, there is deity in each and every one of us, and if we can recognize that deity, we are far better off going forward, helping other people. That's one thing Coach always talked about, making a difference in other people's lives. And if we can do that, we're way ahead of the game. You know, just do one thing for one person every day. No matter who that person is, could be a different person, probably a different person every day. But if you do one, maybe you might do 2, and then maybe you might do 3. And before you know it, you have this chain reaction, and other people may be doing the same thing. We can stick our head in the sand and say, life is really bad and the economy's terrible, or we can be positive. The cup is half full. It's not half empty. The family aspect of it, you really felt like you were part of a family when you were in Ara's presence. There's other coaches that you feel that way too. I thought Bo Schemblecker made his people feel that way too. I think Mark D'Antonio up in Michigan State made his people feel that way as well. They were kind people. They were looking out for the individual and not just worried about the football aspect of it. And I think there's a difference between a boss and a leader. A boss is somebody that uses people. A leader is somebody that helps develop people. And that's what Ara did. That's what Bo did. That's what Mark D'Antonio did. These are people that care about other people and want to see the results of all the hard work they put into these people. Because in those days, in the 60s and 70s, coaches weren't making a ton of money. But I think the reward was seeing how people were going forth and making a difference in the world. And that was something. This picture here, every game that I would come out of the tunnel, my mother and father would be in the same seats. And I would wave like crazy, not feeling odd about doing that. I was proud. I had worked my butt off to get to that point, and I wanted them to enjoy all the accolades that I was receiving. They were a big part of it. They were pushing me in the basement with my father lifting weights. My mother was making the food. My brother was running with me on the Belt Parkway. So these were all things that were important as far as developing this pride. We're playing Northwestern in the first game. I'll never forget the seniors, Rick Tolman. Bob Nider was gone, but Rick Tolman, there was a couple of, Jim O'Malley, they were all saying, hey, you're going to do great. I was the only sophomore starting in that game. And we did. We won 60-6. We beat the pants off of Northwestern in that game. And I never forget the feeling I had when we got off that field, how successful I felt. And then, of course, the rest of the season was one right after another. It was a lot of fun. This fella here, number 72, that's Jerry DiNardo. Now, Jerry is a commentator on Big Ten Network. He was also the head coach at Indiana, at Vanderbilt, and at LSU. We all wanted Jerry to become the head coach at Notre Dame at one time, too. We thought he deserved a shot, especially after some of the people they picked at Notre Dame. You sometimes scratch your head and say, why did they do that? But Jerry was a great guy. I've known him since the 5th grade. We're at Lady of Grace and through St. Francis Prep. He was a real character, a good guy to be around. And that's Eric Pennick in the middle. This same play, this is against Purdue, but this same play, the first play in the second half against Southern Cal, Eric goes 85 yards for a touchdown on this same play. It's called buck sweep. It was high-low buck sweep, and he called odd. Ara had this really unique cadence. He would say odd or even. Even was to the right, odd was to the left, if it was high-low. But if he had fullback base, odd and even meant totally different things. So the defense could never figure it out. The only problem, me and Jerry couldn't figure it out. No, we would be able to figure it out with Tommy Clements' help. He would tell us, go left, go right, go okay. But one of the things that was important, Tom Pagner used to always talk about this, when we lose, it's not over. When you quit, it's over. I mean, we got shellacked against Nebraska. You see the score. It's 40-6 in the Orange Bowl. Some 50 million people saw us get our tails kicked. But that was the beginning of the national championship run. And what we did is we dedicated ourselves to prove that we weren't that bad, because we got shellacked. I mean, Nebraska was pretty good that game, but we weren't that bad. But that game we were. And then we decided, hey, we want to win one game at a time and see if we can win them all. And then the next year it started. But this is a great picture taken by Sports Illustrated. This is Tommy Clements, number 2, going over for a touchdown. That's me, number 56. And I'm playing against a guy named Charles Anthony who I played with up in Canada for a couple of years. Steve Neese is number 64. This was taken by Sports Illustrated, and a great photo. And about 10 years after the game was over, I get a call from the Notre Dame Sports Information. They said, hey, we got this picture we think you might like. And sure enough, I went over there and got it, and it was a great picture. This is Notre Dame, of course, in the middle of the winter. My dogs actually like walking in the wintertime than in the summer. They're big, dark, hairy dogs, so at times it gets pretty hot for them, but in the wintertime they like the snow. There is Regis Philbin in the middle. Interesting story, I called him and I said, Mr. Philbin, I had met him in Las Vegas at this lunch, and I said to him, would you be interested in writing a foreword for my book? He says, I'll do anything for Ara. He remembers one time he had set up an interview with Ara in 1964, right after the Southern Cal game, and they had lost in the last few minutes of the game, 21-17, on a really bad call. But he still went to the interview and interviewed on the 50-yard line in the Coliseum, and we just never forgot that. He felt that Ara was a tremendous man to keep with his word. You know, this is a picture of the book, and the thing that's so great about it here is it's about Ara, and it's about a journey to play through Notre Dame, and what it took, the effort it took to get through Notre Dame, but to play for a man that really is a manifestation of everything that Notre Dame wants to be known for: class, integrity, character. I mean, this is all Ara's attributes. He's somebody that could have been a governor, a senator. He very well could have been the President of the United States. He was that charismatic and that truthful. Key word here is truthful. There's not many people in this world where you can say, I believe him. I believe he's going to do that. And he was that kind of guy. Now, this is a picture of a famous throw out of the end zone. Tommy Clements in the Sugar Bowl. There's an interesting story about this. We were on the 8-yard line, and it was 3rd and 3. So Tommy comes into the huddle and goes, okay, we got the play, long count. Long counts means we're going to hold the count and see if they go offsides. So we'll earn the first down without even running the play. So our captain, team captain, Dave Casper, All-American, Hall of Fame college, Hall of Fame pro, he says, okay guys, nobody go offsides. Guess who goes offsides? Dave Casper goes offsides. So we're all clapping, yay, they went offsides. And there's the flags on Notre Dame. We go, oh my God. So now it's 8 and 3. It's 3rd and 8 from our 3-yard line. Same play, Ara calls, tackle trap pass. And sure enough, Tom spots Robin Weber, caught one pass all year, maybe 2, and he catches his 27-yard play, and we run the clock out and win the national championship. I'll never forget what he said on the podium. Ara said on the podium, he says, this is a great game for Notre Dame fans in Notre Dame. He says, but it's also a great game for college football because it was such an exciting game. There was the lead changed 7 times. Can you imagine that? It was like a heavyweight fight, you know, with bombs thrown each way. And they were so good. Alabama was really good. And Southern Cal was really good that year too. But we won, and they missed an extra point, and we made a field goal, and we come out beating the heck out of them 24-23. But it was a great victory, and I have a beautiful ring to say that we won that game. Interesting story about the ring, too. I lived in Soren Hall. I think most people know where Soren Hall is. And I was getting married 2 days before I graduated. I'm still married. I can't believe she stayed with me for almost 50 years now. But my sister-in-law comes up to me and says, we forgot the ring, the wedding ring. I said, oh, my good. What am I going to do? So my mother said, why don't you go back and get your national championship ring? And sure enough, I put it on, we get married in my national championship ring. Everybody says, geez, what a neat idea. You got married to your national championship ring. I said, it wasn't planned that way. But I may be the only person that get up out of bed, put on his tuxedo, and walk 100 feet to get married. It was really a great way to end my college years at Notre Dame. Coach was at that game, at the wedding, and we had a really good time. I don't know, were you there too? I don't know if you remember that or not. It's such a long time ago.
Tell me about it.
I'm sorry?
I'm saying I'm not sure.
Oh, I'm not either right now. But these are some of my teammates. Some of these guys have gone on. Joe Alvarado has been a CEO of numerous steel companies throughout the world, actually. He's done a tremendous job. These other two guys will be here in a couple of weeks at our national championship reunion at the USC game. This will probably be our last reunion at 50 years. I don't know if they're going to allow wheelchairs on the field when we're at our 60th reunion, but this is going to be pretty sharp. You know, one of the things about the spirit of Notre Dame, it's a great spirit. And I one time spoke at a fantasy camp when they asked me, would you speak at the camp? And all these guys would tell me, boy, Notre Dame's such a great place. It's great to be here. I wish I could live around here. I wish I could go to school here. I says, hey, Notre Dame really is a good place, but you're missing the point. The point is the spirit of what Notre Dame stands for, the spirit of what Ara Parseghian stands for, is to make a difference in the world because you're part of it. Use your life to help other people do good things, and if you can help one person, it's all worth it. And that's really what the spirit of Notre Dame is about, making a difference. You know, we talk about the Knights of Parseghian. Playing for Ara was like playing for royalty. I mentioned that before. We all felt like we were part of his kingdom. Ara wanted leaders with character to affect the world beyond just football, that's for sure. This Play Like a Champion sign was not there when I was in school. It was put on by Lou Holtz, and it's a great sign. All I remember, there used to be this old little Italian guy with a big stogie at the end of the stairway just cheering everybody on as we got out of the tunnel. But that's how small it is. I'm 240 pounds, and I got through that tunnel okay. I don't know how these 300 pounds get down there nowadays. I mean, they got to turn sideways or something. Okay, how to be a knight. This is something I think is important for kids, but it's also good for adults to hear it too. You need to work hard. You need to be a team player. You need to be enthusiastic about life. You need to be disciplined, more than motivated for sure. Be prepared, be friendly, be alert, have manners. Nowadays there's like 50% of kids are not being reared by a mom and a dad, maybe even higher, and the percentage. And all this falls on coaches and teachers to force manners on people. Yes, sir, no, sir, thank you, no, thank you, hold the door open for a gal. All those things are really good things to do. And I think we're slipping away from that. And every chance I get, I try to tell my son or my grandson different things they need to do. To be physically fit. Now, I'm not saying you got to be an Ironman, but I'm saying you should get out and walk every day if you can, or do some kind of exercise where you're keeping the blood flowing in your body, and to be spiritually based. And what I mean by that is understand that we have deity inside of us. I think when Jesus says the kingdom within, he's talking about we all have our own kingdom. And really, I think the kingdom is very wide. I think it spreads throughout the universe. And we have a portal of our consciousness is into this vast amount of consciousness. And we're all connected. We all feel pain. We all feel pleasure. And there's a lot of things that I think we're connected with that sometimes we don't realize it. This is a statue of Ara. I'm sure he didn't want this made. I talked to him right before I had the book published. I said, Coach, I'd like to interview you about the book. He says, yeah, I heard you were doing something about it. He says, I don't want you to do it. I says, why not? He says, well, there's been enough written about me. You know, write about something else. I said, Coach, it's done. We spent 3 years doing this. He says, well, you're a private citizen. You can do what you want. But he says, I'd rather you not do it because there's been too much attention put on me. I said, Coach, we're going to do it. It's the first time I ever went against him, but I said, we're going to do it. And he read the book afterwards, and he liked it, so I was happy about that. But one of the things it says on his he didn't want a statue of him by himself. So there's other players in the statue with him. But on the bottom it says, we have no breaking point. And that's the thing we have to understand, not just physically, but mentally and spiritually. We have no breaking point on doing the right thing. That's the thing that's so important about what Ara gave to us. This is a picture 50 years ago when we were elected captains. And my mother used to say, boy, Coach looks just like a movie star. And he did. He looked like a very good Omar Sharif. That's very handsome Omar Sharif here. But that's Mike Townsend and Dave Casper. This is our 30-year reunion. And I'll just quickly go through this. This is the values of the night: to serve, make a difference in people's lives, to strive for excellence on and off the field, and not to yield to the dark side, but to continue to head for the light, the positive side of life, to provide hope, to believe that there's something going on after this is all over. That gives everybody hope. And no matter how bad it is or how bad it gets, we're going to make it. Patience and persistence every day in doing the right thing, heading towards our goals. This is a sign we made about Ara's Nights, and we have it on some T-shirts, which is kind of fun. Thomas asked Jesus, where is the kingdom of heaven? He says, it's inside you and all around you. So I believe that's true. Keys to the kingdom: loving your hearts for our fellow man, make a difference in the world, have peace of mind of who you are and what you're doing in life. Pass it on to the next generation. That's something we don't always do. May the waters of your consciousness be calm forever. If we can get to that point, we're way ahead of the game. Time passes. I remember our 10-year reunion. We would say, we can still play with these guys. A 20-year reunion, we were talking a lot about our kids. A 30-year reunion, we started talking about our knees, our shoulders, and our neck hurt so much. A 40-year reunion, we realized how important the reunions are. Hips and knees are replaced, shoulders are repaired. There are also teammates that are passing more quickly now. We cherish our time left on earth. But once we were the kings of college football world. It didn't matter if you were a starter or a prep guy. Prep guy is a guy that, they put up the other team's offense and defense. It didn't matter. We were all family. A lot of those prep guys went on to become doctors and lawyers, and we go to them for eye work, for all these teeth are from Gary Patempa. He became a dentist, and a great dentist. This is at our 40th reunion, and you can see as we're starting to age here. But in conclusion here, I just want to say, as one of Ara's Nights, I believe that in the midst of all the darkness and the confusion of the world, we have a chance to change people to see the positive side of life. To know that each person has a warm light that is inside of them and is looking for direction, encouragement, confidence, and hope. We can give it to them. We must forever keep the dark side of life away from people and keep them pointing to the light. Anyone can be one of Ara's Nights. If you have the core values I talked about, you will make great decisions. You will be the positive voice in a world that is hungry for common sense and makes people productive and help find their purpose in life. The kingdom is inside of us, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your time today, and I hope this presentation helped you understand how much we need you. Thank you. Well, you want to open it up for questions? Sure.
I was at Pullman High School in 1964.
Okay.
Ara Parseghian was our speaker at the fall football banquet. And I remember those things that you said. Be true to yourself, have a passion for what you do, and live it. And I'll never forget that.
Yeah.
He really got a standing ovation for about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So I do remember that in 1964. He was still coaching, I think, at Notre Dame.
Oh, sure.
wasn't he?
He was at Notre Dame in '64, yes. Yeah.
I think he got him from Notre Dame.
Yeah. You know, I actually have some, if you like, you come up here, I have some Ara's first talk to the team. It's pretty good. There's another thing I have up here. We were asked as former players when Coach got sick to not call and maybe just send a letter. So I wrote a letter, and about 3 months after Coach passed, I get a call from Sports Illustrated. And the guy says, "Is this Frank Pomarico?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "This is Joe Smith from Sports Illustrated." I said, "Yeah, what can I do for you?" He says, "Do you remember writing a letter to Coach Parseghian?" I says, "Yeah." He said, "Well, we're doing an article about him, and we'd like to put this in the magazine." I says, "Really?" I says, I don't even remember what I wrote." He says, "Well, I got it right here. I'll read it to you." So he reads it to me, and I says, "Hey, that was pretty good." It only took me 10 minutes to do, but it all came from my heart. And the thing that I think I said was, "Thank you for making us part of your family, because you made us richer than all the gold on earth, by being part of his family." So, any other questions? I mean, what an experience it was, though. I mean, when you're going through it, you don't realize how awesome it really was, because we were sitting close to the top of national football at that time. Right before the Sugar Bowl, interesting story, Chicky, is we played on Thursday. We played Air Force on Thursday, and we beat them pretty good. And now we're undefeated. And we're going to see now who is going to win the Ohio State-Michigan game. Because the winner was probably good. They were ahead of us as far as the rankings are concerned. And we had to see, who's going to win to see who's going to play Alabama, because they were number one. So Ara said, "We have to pray they tie." Guess what happened? 10-10 tie. So it was wide to the right or something like that, I think, the kick. And sure enough, we're up to play Alabama in the Sugar Bowl, and they were good. They were really good. But it was a great experience, and it's a greater experience having children. It's a greater experience having grandchildren. I mean, I really feel that. But as far as a 21-year-old boy, that was the greatest experience I had up until that time, and it was awesome. I think back now, I can't believe I did those things, because I'm a 70-year-old broken down body that can hardly get up in the morning, but I was driven to get to that point, that's for sure. Coach, you got any questions? Okay. Chicky?
Did you ever want to coach at the college level?
I did at first. I played ball. I got drafted by the Chiefs, and I got cut right before the season started. And then the next year, I got asked by a guy named Marv Levy, who was a coach of the Bills later on. But he was at Montreal, and he said, "Would you like to come up here and play?" And I said, "Yeah, I think I do." Because I'm not going to do it again when I'm 35, so I think I was 23 at the time, and I went up for 4 years, and my wife and I had a good time up there. Canadians were nice people. The football was good, not the NFL, but it was good, We had a lot of fun. And then I wanted to get into coaching. But, in those 4 years that passed, a lot of guys were you had to go back and become a graduate assistant, and I had a wife, and I wanted to support her, and I started working, so it was tougher to do that. And if Coach was still coaching, I might have gone on as a graduate assistant then, and maybe gone from there to another place, but he had stopped coaching the year after I left, which was a dark day for college football when he retired, but it was probably good for him. Any other questions? Guys, I really enjoy being here with you guys. Not just here, but every day taking you to the doctors or the hospital or to dinner or whatever. It's really a fun thing for me to do, and I enjoy meeting each and every one of you and building relationships with.
It's a lot of fun, and I appreciate you dealing with me, too. So, thank you very much.